Hey, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Behind Aroma Success. I am happy and excited to bring to you Meredith Cheshire. You're going to be really happy to listen to this particular episode because she is a fellow entrepreneur in aromatherapy that also knows business. And so, that's our passion over here. Today, she's going to really shed some light for us when it comes to product. So those of you who have product-based businesses in aromatherapy, please listen up. This is going to be an important conversation. Of course, we're going to get into knowing Meredith a little bit here before we dive into that subject. But I want you to hear this portion because it's something that I definitely don't teach. A lot of people aren't teaching it, and it's something that you need to know. Before we get started, I'm just going to hop over here and tell you a little bit about Meredith. So Meredith is a registered aromatherapist. She's a master herbalist and owner and operator of 2 holistic medical practices in Central Florida. So she specializes in pain and digestion from an aromatic and herbalist standpoint, very unique, and consults with small business owners on starting up and maintaining their practices. Her first degree was in business and finance, and she's passionate about cost accounting and budgeting. So she's like marrying the 2 things that my husband and I do. I mean, he's a CPA, so he has all that part that is like German to me. And then, of course, the business part. So I'm excited to learn today and to listen to all of this. Before we get started, Meredith, and you come on and introduce yourself and talk about this great subject, I want to know, my first question that I like to ask, you have a very significant and very important business that you're running here and doing so successfully. My question to you is, what gave you the confidence to get started in this aromatherapy-based business?
I think the easiest answer to that question was out of safety. So when we opened in 2005, my husband at the time and myself, we opened an acupuncture practice in Central Florida. And around 2015 is when the multi-level marketing oil companies started to kind of influx the area. So we would, go to work every morning and a woman would come in and say, oh, well, someone told me frankincense cures my cancer. So I drank a whole bottle of it and wound up in the hospital. Or I'm going to put bergamot on the back of my neck and then go play pickleball in 90-degree Florida heat and then come in and ask to pop the blister on the back of their neck with an acupuncture needle. So there was quite a few of those timeless scenarios where, and this is where everything got a little wonky for myself, because I was going to take this little 50-hour course just to kind of put a little sign in the waiting room that says, okay, if you're using essential oils, let's, just use a little bit of safety here. And what ended up happening is I ended up going down a wormhole because when I was a child, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be a doctor, but my family has always been big business. Like my grandfather was the treasurer of Sony Corporation, worked at GE. Like I've just been surrounded with big business coming out of New York City my entire life. So when I said I wanted to be a vet, my parents were like, well, that's cool. So the science hit me with the aromatherapy classes. And I think I ended up my first year with 1,500 to 2,000 hours of aromatherapy training because I just couldn't get enough. I was just like
you were
consuming.
Hooked.
Yeah, I was. I really was. So it was completely by accident, to be honest with you.
I love that. This is so great. Let me tell you why, because we've just started this series. And every time I'm talking to someone, it's similar. It's this thing where I just did it. It's just this whole, and I really want everybody to pay attention to this because I feel like people who have the most unique businesses and who have enjoyed some level of success, they have that thing in them that just, well, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to do this. And it's like you learn sometimes as you go, but you saw a need and you went to fill it. And I think it's one of the best ways to get started in business is realizing what's happening in your community and where you serve and filling that need if it's something that speaks to you. So I just absolutely love that. So you had the holistic practice. One of them, acupuncture,
Mhm.
right? And is that
Correct.
where you kind of started incorporating the aromatherapy?
Yes. So I finished going to school, and from it, there's two aspects here. There's the healing aspect, and then there's the business aspect. So the
Mhm.
business aspect is in acupuncture. A lot of times now, everything is covered by insurance.
Mhm.
We used to be a cash-based practice, and then we had to go to an insurance-based practice. So that changes your cash flow significantly. And anybody will tell you when you have to go from that type of situation to a different type of situation, your cash flow changes. Um, so at the time, we were thinking, okay, well, how can we bring more cash flow in? Because now the insurance companies weren't paying us for 6 weeks. So
Goodness.
yeah, it was pretty rough. So my ex-husband had turned around and he said, make pain creams. And I'm like, what? He's like, make pain creams. I'm like, okay, and I had no idea what I was doing. So I went and I found all the science and started looking up beta caryophyllene and how that mixes in with black cumin seed oil, and how that black cumin seed oil can work as a steroid in certain scenarios. And just it took me 4 months to formulate this, and we turned one of our exam rooms into a lab, and we had the state come in and put a sink in, and next thing you know, I was making pain creams. So
You made pain creams. You see what I'm saying? This is that mindset. There's a need. Our cash flow is blocked. So instead of saying, well, this isn't working, we're stuck, they, pivoted and made it work.
Yeah, and that's what we did, pivot.
I love it.
So we made these pain creams, and they started to work. So everybody loved them. So I was like, okay, well, let me tweak this a little bit. So because there was people who had acute pain, and then people who had chronic pain, because you have to realize we're in a retirement community. So we have these different type of patients. So for the people, we have one cream. It's called levoprofen, but I call it the pickleball cream because on Friday afternoons is when all the pickleball tournaments were, and the acupuncture would come in, office would come in like an emergency room, like my elbow's hurting, I split my shin, I think my ankle's swollen, and we just started throwing this cream on it. Everybody loved it. But then they wouldn't, because it's a plant-based, total plant-based product, it's not going to last for a long time. That's just the nature of the medicine, right? So I made one, switched some ingredients around, played with different oils, and then I made one for more chronic use. So that would lower inflammation more than just be an analgesic. So my ex-husband was so thrilled about that. He's like, well, what else can you do? I'm like, I don't know. So
more.
So he comes in. This is actually my funniest formulation story. And I know it's G-rated. I'm going to keep it G-rated, but it was not G-rated at the time.
Thank you for your efforts. I appreciate it.
So he calls me up and he's like, what can you do for toenail fungus? I'm like, I don't know. So he's like, do you think you can do something for toenail fungus? I'm like, sure. He's like, I got this old guy here and it's really bad. And he's tried everything. I'm like, okay. So I went to the lab and I kind of messed with some stuff and came up with this spray. And I brought it to the exam room, gave it to the guy, and off he went. So I'm picking up the kids like a week later. My husband at the time calls me. He goes, what did you do? I'm like, what do you mean, what did I do? I'm like, did I overspend somewhere? Did I drop something? Like, did I not pay a bill? Is the lights
like, use more words. What did I do?
What'd you do? I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. He said, I can't believe you blank got rid of the toenail fungus. And from that point on, I just became his personal little medicine maker.
Yeah.
And that's just how it went. And
I love this story.
Then we got too big. The lab got too big. We were just over so many bottles and so many carriers and bases and glass beakers, and then the patients would start to complain that the smells were getting to be too much.
Okay.
We had a 4,000 square foot office, but still
because you were formulating it there. Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
So we talked to our property manager. And when we started this, I was like, oh, there's this cute store down on our main square. He was like, oh, okay. Well, when we wanted it, it wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it was. And they're like, we have this one spot. And my ex-husband and I looked at each other. We were like, oh my goodness, okay, this is supposed to happen. And we were able to have a storefront, but enough for a lab, and then also an office for our staff in the back. And that's how the storefront and everything else really started to move.
Oh, I love it. So this is a perfect segue into what you're going to teach us today, because many of you out there, you have a product-based business. Maybe you started similarly to what happened with Meredith. Maybe it's something different. Maybe you're just getting it off the ground. So please do talk to us about this whole thing about cost and what we need to know when you have a product-based business.
I guess the number one issue that I've seen when I went to aromatherapy school is the concept of take the cost of your materials and what that should be. So your bottle is $1, right? Maybe your oils are 50 cents. So that's $1.50, and add 50%. So you're going to sell it for $3. It's very simple math. And this is really where my business part comes in. It's very simple math, and it's very simply wrong. Like at the end of the day, because the best way to kind of use the KISS method, keep it simple, silly, is I'm making this pain cream, but my cost of my lights, my cost of my rent, the cost of my labor, the cost of my assistant helping me with that, that is going to be eaten up rather quickly. So that 50% model doesn't work. So you go and you say, okay, I'm going to make X number of products for, and you're doing what we do large scale now. So like a small batch for us is 100, but, and we take a percentage of that and we put it in overhead. So out of each bottle, we're going to say 35 cents or 45 cents of our cost is going back into keeping our lights on, paying our rent, keeping our internet on. People lose, that's very simple. It can get much, deeper than that, but people don't think about that. They don't think about, they just want it cut and easy. And then you go and you look and you're like, oh, wait a minute. If I add that overhead, I need like 60, 70%, right? And then you start to look and go, well, I need to keep it at 50. So then is when you have to start looking at your supply chain. So maybe you're buying oils, even though you're buying at a wholesale rate, you're getting your tea tree for, 50 cents a mil. Well, if you wait a little bit and you spend a little bit extra money, you can start getting your tea tree for 2 cents a mil. If you plan out your business plan correctly. So now you can stay within that 50% markup range, and you're actually making more money because now you're putting all that overhead in. So now you can pay your bills.
Yes.
Where before you're just turning around and you're paying for your bottles. And the biggest thing I've seen online in a lot of these internet groups is that people don't know how to find suppliers. And
I don't know that either. I love that you're talking about that. I think a lot of people have no idea how to find suppliers.
They have no clue. The biggest, and I don't know why this is, but people are very secret about their suppliers. And I guess I don't understand why they are, but I'm kind of following the lead because I feel like there's a secret I don't know.
It's like maybe for some reason, are their prices going to go up if too many people?
Right.
It could be something like that. I don't know if anybody else.
My shipping gonna go 50% higher.
Something that's gonna go higher. I don't know if I'm sure other people experience this too. Because I'm an aromatherapist, I get, of course, my focus is on the business side, but I get tons of offers from distillers, and I never know. And I'm just like, should I? Because I just have my places where I get oils, and I just continue to get them, and they're expensive. But I'm not making any products, so it's easy for me to do that. But I do always wonder when I'm getting those, I'm like, how do you know when it's a good supplier? And I know that's like a whole other conversation we could probably have a show on.
Right. There's so many wormholes you could go down. The biggest thing I found And the easiest way to kind of tie that up with a bow, that part without going deeper, is you can find everything and every person that you need all over the world on LinkedIn. Not Facebook,
I
not
love
Instagram,
that. Yeah,
on
LinkedIn is the
LinkedIn.
place. I love LinkedIn. I love that. This is so informative. And I think I do want to ask you back to talk about that particular thing, but I want to just add something here. What she's saying is so important. You all who take my classes, you know, I always talk about pricing when it comes to service-based, because I'm service-based. And I love what she just said, because it's just like this aha moment that it's not just us, but if you're product-based, you have to think about more than just, I know a lot of you struggle with, if you're coaching or if you have a school, you struggle with how much tuition, how much should I charge this person? And I'm always talking to you about, you have to think about bigger picture. You need a team. You notice she talked about her staff. You need that. If you have you're not online and you have like an in-person studio or something, there's a lot of cost associated with that. And so sometimes what people aren't understanding when it comes to their pricing is they're pricing based on what they feel like a person can afford. And in reality, there's so many other things that need to be considered. If you plan to have a sustainable business, you have to price in such a way where you're not just breaking even. That's never going to work.
Right. And that is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that is a very big mindset of you're going to price your product based on what you think the market is going to bear. The one thing I learned from a business coach is you need to base on your product on what you think you're worth.
Absolutely. Yes.
And then the market's going to fall around it. Now, if you turn around and you say, you can't, it's a numbers game. It's very much like formulating, right? It's very similar to formulating if you want to catch it, because people are so scared of numbers and they're so scared. And I'm not. Like, to me, that is the most exciting part of my job. Is I'm really a dork when it comes to this stuff, and it's like, well, who wants to talk about cost accounting? I do. I love it. Is to kind of start breaking it down and going, okay, my tea tree oil, this is not fitting into that circle of costs that I need to be at. So you don't raise your cost, you don't raise the price of your product. You go and you do the research to find a better supplier.
Lower your cost. Yeah.
You know, and that's on the back end. And nobody knows that you're doing that. People ask me all the time, how can you have not raised your paint frame prices in 3 years? It's very simple, because when my costs, especially with COVID and everything, started going up, okay, well, this is now, this cost is now higher, but so let me shop this, and this. And I was able to cut 15, 30, in one case on one of the oils, 45% by just going to a different distiller. Wow. So I'm still keeping my same profit without raising my prices. But you have
still
to know
having
what to
the
look
same
for.
Effect in the cream. Everybody still loves it. It's still doing. I love that this conversation, because I know a lot of you and some of our students have come through who are making product. I know you were spending a lot on your product, and we didn't cover this in school because I don't know anything about cost accounting, you know? So this is so important. It's really valuable what she's talking about. And she has a service actually that's going to help you all. So those of you who are watching this video, if you take a look and you're on our, either on social media or on our email list, you're going to see a special offer for you to take a look at what Meredith does. And if you're product-based, I would recommend that you jump on it like immediately. So you'll just click that link and it'll take you to her special offer for our audience. Yeah, so that's going to help them with, is that going to help them figure out their cost accounting?
What I've noticed when I work with people on this is it doesn't just help with cost accounting, it's a pivot in thinking. The way people start looking at their business changes. Yeah. Because it was, you've had Colleen Thompson on, and she sits on the board with me, and we were having this conversation in passing, just, chit-chatting. And she's like, Meredith, well, what do you do for spillage? I'm like, you know what? I didn't even think about that, but she's right. There should be a percentage for spillage. I remember one of the first times I started making salves, and I was very young and not very smart. And I wanted to save the world with aromatherapy. And so I decided I was going to make a salve with rosemary, not rosemary, I'm sorry, rose, neroli, and jasmine.
Ooh.
And make like a perfume, like a, you know, kind of like a salve perfume, like a hard perfume. This was all well and good because again, I was just getting these big bottles of oil, just playing around. And I ended up dropping like a $90 bottle of jasmine on the floor.
Physical pain.
It was physical pain. And when Colleen and I were speaking about that, that was the first thing that came to mind was like, okay, well, if whatever I do with these salves, I have to take that $90 bottle and somehow put it into my cost, because even if I spilled it, it's still $90. It's going into this lot of product. Yeah. And as much as that made me cry, it's the reality of it, because no matter what, if you don't do that, and I'm selling these salves, it doesn't matter what, if it's saying you're making 50% profit, you're still working at a loss in the very beginning.
Absolutely. And you're killing yourself, and you're nothing's coming in really.
Right. And this is why a lot of aromatherapists go, I don't understand why I'm not covering my bills. Yeah, I'm doing everything they told you to. And this is why, because you're not wrapping up the whole thing and you're saying to the customer, what do you want me to price it at? Instead of saying, no, I can tell you fact for fact, line item, percent, that this is what it costs. Right. I'm not making that up. That's a number.
You're not making it up. And here's the thing too, that I love what you're saying is that is really the cost, because they don't know what it costs. We have to educate and guide people to what they need. They're paying for results. People pay for results. So they're paying for all these. Yes, you're considering all these things as you put the price on there, but you're not pricing it out of greed. You're pricing it out of, this is what this costs. So for you to get this result, this therapeutic result, this got so many other benefits, probably a page list long of benefits when you look at the full picture of the components in a blend like that. Yeah, it's gonna have a price tag on it, and people will pay it. They'll pay it just because of how something smells, much less actually having a therapeutic benefit. So I really appreciate you explaining that and talking about that. So I really feel like we need a part 2 to this.
Well, and this is not my my path per se, but this is your path for something to think about. And I might come to you with this later on, but something for you to think about is the cost of your time. Nobody puts that in either. Yeah. So I went to a business coach when I started this part, because with the acupuncture clinic, it's very linear, money in, money out, insurance in, patients out. It's very simple. Where a holistic retail, product making, formulation, botanical, business is much wider, vaster. And so I went to a business coach just to kind of screw my head on straight, for lack of a better word, because I knew I had to move my model. Like my grandfather, who taught me everything I knew about business, he always said to me, know what you don't know. The number one rule in business is know what you don't know. And I knew I didn't know what I was doing. So I went to this business coach to get myself straightened out. And she said, well, you need to charge yourself $500 an hour. I almost fell off the chair. And I'm like, I'm not worth $500 an hour.
Right.
And she said, that's your number one problem.
That's the number one. Yeah.
That's the number one problem. Yes, you are worth $500 an hour.
I agree. Yeah.
And that's another wormhole people can go down, but you need to know your worth.
You need to know your worth. And I feel like so to speak to that, we actually have a challenge coming up somewhere around the beginning of February. It's a free challenge. But the idea behind it is that kind of mindset thing. And it's about having fun in business again. But while you're doing that, in changing your mindset, improving your relationship around money, improving your relationship and belief in yourself. And this is even for seasoned aromatherapists. We find that for our audience, we're getting more and more people who are seasoned. They've been doing this for a while. And even those of us who have a low level of success, we've been doing it for a while, we can still flirt with a lot of self-doubt, and so getting past that, because there's always that other level. there's always that other level in whether it's in joy, maybe that you want to work less and earn more, or maybe you want to earn the same but work less, or maybe you want to work with a whole different kind of clientele. These kinds of pivots can happen with a different mindset, as you just mentioned, and understanding your own value. So we're actually going to be doing a challenge around that really soon. You guys will
and
see
it's
it.
good because it's needed. I think it's needed.
Yeah, I think so many of us don't understand our value. We do need to change that. We need to support each other on that. So
and I mean, a lot of people don't come out at 18 years old going, oh, I want to be an aromatherapist and an herbalist.
That's right.
So they're coming in their 30s and their 40s.
That's it.
And it's almost like a little bit of a midlife crisis, right? And you're starting over, and it's scary because you don't have the linear path that you had in your 20s, like go to high school, go to college, go to get your master's, get your doctorate, follow the line. So I think that's where a lot of the self-doubt comes in.
I think so. And, I see that too. I appreciate what you just said. And that answers something that we talk about a lot, because what I see in this community too is people, which I believe in it too, is a lot of education. People are very comfortable enrolling in school after school after school and getting certification after certification because they understand that academia. Right. But when it comes to actually implementing and now forging a business that you've invested so much money into, can't do it. The fear just overtakes them, and so they take another course.
Right. I think that is 100% accurate. Yeah. And then I've had some people look at me, and some of my clients don't always like me because I'm like, well, how much was your education? Because that's what they did, right? They go to one school, then they go to another school, and next thing you know, they're $30,000 in.
There you go.
Right. And say, well, you need to put that cost into your product.
Yeah.
Well, what do you mean? Well, how are you going to recoup your expenses? What?
Absolutely.
And there are ways to figure it out. Is it going to be a perfect system for everybody? No. But if you start to understand how it works, then at least if you can capture at least 75% of your true cost, you're so much better than just saying, okay, well, my roller ball cost $1, my oils cost $1, so it was $2, and I'm going to sell it for $4. It's a whole different way of thinking, and it empowers you because it empowers you to start looking at. And that's how you really get into the world of business, because you have to start talking to distillers. You have to start shopping. So maybe, company ABC is where you've gotten everything from, and you've heard about company, ZYX. So you go to look them up, and holy cow, if you spend an extra $50, your costs go down significantly, and you can make up, I can make more product because now I have more material.
Yeah. It's so important to know these things, and what your grandfathers know, what you don't know. It's such a big difference. It's such a big difference when you can get clarity around those things. And then messaging, once you get that, what Meredith is talking about, and if you didn't have difficulty maybe explaining this to your clients so that they want to purchase, that's where messaging comes in. So you take the two pieces of what we're doing, take what Meredith is saying, and then take what we do and put the messaging to it, and you're good. You now have a sustainable and thriving business because people understand. You're not just saying, oh, take this bottle. I know it's $100, but it's worth it. You have to give them more reasons to purchase with you versus whoever else they may have purchased from. And then Meredith's system really helps you to kind of clarify too that mindset and what you should be charging. I really, really love that. So you guys are going to enjoy that process. So you can click on the link that you see in the email. If you can't click on it, or it's not showing where you're watching this video, just send a note to my office, support@aromaspecialist.com, and we will get it to you right away. And we're going to end with 2 questions. So I've got this extra questions that I'm asking now, and you just answer to your comfort level, and you don't even have to answer if you want. But what I'm asking is, especially women, we have really interesting relationship with ourselves and our bodies and what we look like and where we come from and all these different things, right? And I feel like, and I'm just wanting to find out from all of you, I feel like the things that we love about ourselves and the things that we don't like about ourselves are learned to some degree. And I think that it starts way back in those formative years. Like those of us who work with like the mind and the therapy and all that kind of stuff, we know that it usually happens in those first couple of years, right? And so I'm asking this question to kind of see, what is that really true? Like, does it carry on? So when you think about what you most like about yourself, does it come from way back? Like, this is what I've always loved about me physically, or who I am, what you really love and what you don't like. And do you think there's a connection between what you were taught and what you learned about yourself later? Does that question make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Share whatever you feel like.
I guess it's a kind of twofold. Is I was laughing the other day. I am Irish Italian, and growing up, I remember going to. This is so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm going to be on the internet.
If you want me to cut it out later,
no,
I can
it's
cut it
fine.
out.
No, it's fine. It's fine. And if my cousin is watching, you can see I'm still damaged by this, right? Okay, so I'm like 12 years old, and I'm at a Pointer Sisters concert in Jones Beach, New York. It's the first concert, that I've ever been to. I'm like all excited. And I go and sit down next to my cousin. She turns around, she goes, "Man, you have thunder thighs." And I'm like 12 years old, right?
Right.
So,
But me,
my life, I'm going around and like trying to put Spanx on and do all this stuff, and that's just, I'm Irish, I'm Italian, I'm Scottish. I have big, like, it's just the way I was, but it followed me around. And then it actually was really funny. It was about maybe 2 years ago when all of a sudden this whole like big derriere thing came in to play. And I'm watching this girl on Instagram, and she's putting in like butt pads to make her butt. Yes. And I'm like, she's paying to like get my butt to look like mine. And I'm like, oh wow, I feel pretty good now. It took 40 years.
Yeah.
Now
it's okay.
Everything comes around.
It comes back around. Oh, I love that.
And I think that's as women, that's something that I recently learned about that type of physical attachment we have to the outside world of what we look like, is that it always changes. So maybe your chest area is not very popular right now because you have, doubles, right? But then in 10 years, all of a sudden, doubles are in.
That's what everybody wants. Yeah.
Right. And I think that we see a cycle of what women are supposed to look like based upon what society says. Pretty much it changes every 10 years. That's what I think.
I agree. Isn't that interesting? So I feel like it's something that, of course, we have to learn. Like, even we were talking about knowing your value when it comes to our business, but as women, knowing our value regardless of the trend, and being proud of those parts that we're not supposed to be proud of, because I think it affects subconsciously. I think it affects how far sometimes we feel like we're allowed to go. Whether it be on stage or in our business or in a relationship or anything. It's like, this is my little nest. This is where it is okay for me to thrive because I'm this, and this, but I'm not this, and this. So I will never do, that far. Right. So it's just so interesting. It's so interesting. I've got a million of those stories. I'm going to be putting together a little something where I tell them. But it's just so funny. It's so funny, but we really do get attached to those. So anyway, thank you for being so open and transparent, Meredith. We really enjoyed listening and learning, and we feel like we could learn quite a bit more from you. So I'd love to have you back again, and we'll reach out to get that set up. But all of you, please reach out to Meredith, get connected, click the link, learn more about this because we need it. Like, it's time for aromatherapy to advance. That's my thing right now. And it's time for us to really understand the business side so that we can advance. And as we advance, we're going to be able to help people to use aromatherapy properly and really unleash the full effect of aromatherapy. Thank you so much, Meredith, for your time. And we're going to sign off for today. Bye.